Hey, everybody. Welcome to Healing Hearts. We are here with another edition of Basketball Diaries. We have basketball families that we've been talking to. The last episode, we talked to a couple of moms who lost their children to sudden cardiac arrest during AAU basketball games. Today, we are on a different level. We have two moms here today who both have sons who played professional basketball. We have Jewel Upshaw, whose son Zeke Upshaw played for the G League. And also we have Wilma Bates, who has a son, Kada Bates, who plays professional basketball for the Denver Nuggets. But her younger son, Kai Bates, is here with us today, who actually experienced the sudden cardiac arrest in high school. And we're going to talk about the myths that athletes, we have this idea of athletes that they are so strong and that they are so healthy. And just because they look strong and healthy from the outside does not mean that we know what's going on on the inside. So Kai is here with us for a short time today. So we're going to go straight to Kai and we're going to talk about what he, as the person who survived sudden cardiac arrest, felt and experienced. Kai, can you tell us a little bit about what happened on that day when you were 15 years old in high school?
Yes, of course. And I just want to start by, thanking you for having me. I'm really honored to speak about this topic, especially during this month of sudden cardiac arrest. So that day was a pretty normal day. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Went to my classes as usual, had all my pre-practice stuff, was stretching and all that. And one of the early drills in that practice was a pretty kind of just a warm-up type drill before we really get into the thick of practice. Just up and down, like 3-on-3 type drill. And this is a drill that you don't really get like that exhausted from. So I came out of one of the rotations feeling a little more tired than usual. I consider myself to be in decent enough shape to get through this drill at the high school level without feeling how I did. And I remember I came off the court, I really felt my heart beating out of my chest. It was a feeling I hadn't ever had before. And I remember I turned to one of my teammates just saying, my heart feels like it hurts, like it feels weird. And as soon as those words kind of came out of my mouth is when I collapsed. And due to the, extraordinarily fast, reactive response time for the athletic trainers, Emily Martz and Maddie Beal, two women that have been so important in my life, and we consider them family now. Due to their reaction time and their training, they were able to administer an AED on me, and I responded to the first shock. I did not have a pulse up until that first shock, but I did respond, and I remember just laying on the ground. I just really didn't understand what had happened because it was, it happened just like that. And I think that's the key point about all of this is that it really can't happen so unexpectedly. And there were no warning signs up to that point. I had been, working out very consistently, had a good diet, was a very active, kid growing up, especially in high school. And when I, came to on the gym floor, I just remember kind of just waking up very confused. And I remember being put into the ambulance and went to the hospital in town. And then when I did most of my recovery was actually in Peoria, where I stayed in the hospital for a week. And, that week felt like, forever, but I was able to learn humbleness and I was able to put things in perspective because, there were kids on my hall that they hadn't left the hospital yet. All they knew was that those hospital walls, they're hooked up to some different machines and all these different, things that are keeping them alive. So right off the bat, I was able to not really pout too much or put myself down too much because I realized I had a lot that I still had to be grateful for. They diagnosed me with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a condition where when you work really hard, blood has to be pumped out throughout your body. And my heart walls were thick, which is what the condition really means. And when my heart walls were thick, blood couldn't get to my heart, which is why I passed out. Since then,
and I want to point out that is the number one condition that kills student athletes from sudden cardiac arrest is the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and it has a higher incidence in Blacks than others, and we're not 100% sure why. But for you, the perspective that you're coming out with, and the the outlook, that you're the lucky ones because there's so many kids who do not survive. You're 1 in 10 basically, because 10% of people who suffer sudden cardiac arrest survive. The other 90% do not survive.
Right.
And when you say that it was the quick action of the people who jumped in and gave you CPR and had the AED connected, I think I watched your story and they said within 2 minutes it was connected. That is tremendous. That the quick response is the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful. Say their names again, the trainers who saved you.
Maddie Beal and Emily Martz.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Forever grateful.
So you said that you were not feeling any symptoms leading up to that moment that you said your heart felt funny.
No type of symptoms. Like during the drill, I remember I shot a shot, and like as soon as I shot it, that was when it really began. Like I just kind of felt my heart just kind of like, it just felt different. At that point, it didn't necessarily hurt. It just really felt different and like with just beating a lot faster than I like was expecting it to, than I was accustomed to having it beat. And then when I came
so in
off
the
the
days
court,
prior to that, and like the day before, the week before, had you felt anything?
nothing. I think the day before I was, downstairs lifting weights and running the treadmill like I normally did. Just trying to stay in shape. So yeah, there was no type of red flags up to that point.
Wow. Wow. And Mom, Wilma, where were you when you got the call that Kai had collapsed?
I was coming back from Columbus, Ohio. Our older son had surgery. And so I was in Indianapolis, just coming from Columbus. So I was still about 2.5 hours out. So I got the call from his high school coach that said, Kai was down. It didn't look good. So there was nothing I could do. I just had to call my husband, who travels a lot. And he happened to be in town that day, thank goodness. And I remember telling him, hey, I just got a call from Kai's coach. He collapsed. I don't have a lot of information, but I need you to get to the hospital. And so he went from his office, which probably about 10 minutes away, and was able to get to the hospital. I think he was there when Kai got there, actually.
Okay. I want to ask each of you a question, and I'll start with you, Kai, and I want us each to answer. What did you know about sudden cardiac arrest before it affected you personally?
I really didn't know a whole lot, to be honest. I don't know if I had necessarily been to any seminars or, had any type of informational meetings about it necessarily. So I would say my knowledge was pretty limited before, everything happened with me.
Do you think this is something that student athletes should be more informed about?
Oh, 100%. I think that, like you said in the beginning, I think you made a great statement saying that sometimes there's this stigma that athletes, think that they're like invincible and think that just because they're like in great shape, that's going to last, forever. And there's nothing that could ever happen that could alter that. And I think that that's really like, it's just really not accurate because these things do happen. And it's better to have every resource that you can possibly have on site and a trained staff on site that knows what these signs look like, and even with me, all my warning signs was that I, said to my teammate that my heart hurts. And, and I also have to, thank my teammate because he was the one that, immediately ran to the trainer's room and let them know like what was going on. But it really is about understanding that there are things that can happen, in life and in health that you can't really prepare yourself for necessarily because they just happen so sporadically. But when you do enough research about it and you go to enough meetings and you learn enough about it and you have a good grasp of understanding that these things do happen and you put these athletes in a position to where if they do happen, you have a staff that can, act very quickly. I think that is a very important aspect of athletics in today's world.
Something that stands out to me is you told your teammate, and I think that goes back to the stigma with athletics. We're more likely to tell our teammates that something's bothering us than our coach immediately because we don't want to be seen as that kid that's complaining or trying to get out of something. Was that at all a part of why you told your teammate, not your coach?
Well, I think at that point I think I realized that it was serious, and I just turned to really the first person that I could because I just did not feel right. I think whoever was standing next to me was going to, hear me say that to them. It wasn't necessarily like I chose my teammate over my coach. If my coach standing next to me, I was going to tell him to, because it was one of those feelings where I just did not
Right.
feel like 100%. I just felt very off. I just had to get out like, okay, like something's not right with me right now.
But when you first felt it, when you were shooting the basket, you tried to push through it. It didn't
Oh
seem
yeah,
serious enough.
yeah. It didn't feel different enough for me to really pay attention to it, but like it really that it escalated in about 10 seconds, I'd say, from when I shot
Wow.
that. And like when I came off the court, because the drill is like it's basically 3-on-3 up and down continuously. So you go through one rep of 3-on-3 and then you're off. So I went through my rep and I was off. So from when I shot that shot, that was when it like kind of felt weird. I was like, I'm probably all right. Like ain't a big deal. And the time it took for me to walk over to where the line formed to get into it for the next rep, that it had escalated up to the point where it was like, this is not normal. And
And you were out.
and I was out. Yes.
Almost as soon as the words came out your mouth, you were out.
Yeah, I just kind of the next thing I knew from when I said that was me waking up on the gym floor. So yes.
So what would your message be to other athletes who may feel something and want to push through something? Like, what would you want to say to an athlete that might be watching this, or a parent who might show this video to an athlete? By the way, parents, if you are watching this, go ahead and get your children, bring them in. Let's have conversations about this. Everybody share this video so that we can share the knowledge and save some lives. But what would you like to say to any athlete or parent that's watching?
I would just say that you have to always, care for yourself first above anything else, and know that you're not invincible. And this goes from, from the extreme of a heart condition, of a heart, a sudden cardiac arrest, to, your ankle feeling weird. It's like we have to get over this mentality of, just push through everything, push through it. It's not that bad. If your ankle's feeling funny, talk to your trainer, get it worked out, because you don't want to not say anything, and it develops into something that where if you said something at first, you'd be out for a couple of weeks. Now you're out for 3 or 4 months because you broke your ankle because you didn't say anything, and it goes all the way up to my situation. Um, you have to express how you're feeling to these people, because everyone around you wants to help you. When you get a part of these organizations, whether it's high school, college, professional, it's their job to help you out, and vice versa. You have to let them help you. You have to let them know how you're feeling, let them know, your day-to-day mindset, and not just, physically too, mentally too. If you're not having a good day, you gotta let people around you know, just so that you know that they are thinking about you at least. So I would definitely just say, always care about the people that care about you, and the only way to do that is to let them in on how you're feeling.
Thank you so much, Kai.
I agree with that 100%.
Yes. So thank you, Kai. I know you have studies to do. You're still in college. Kai is 20 years old, joining us. He's studying sports psychology, is working with the team at Butler University, to stay involved in athletics as well. So it's going to always still be a part of your life, right?
Yes, and there's so many different facets that you can be involved in athletics. If you still want to be involved in athletics, something like this happens to you. That's one thing that I learned, the most when I was kind of going through it and really just struggling with, my identity and who I like wanted to turn out to be. My mom really helped me out with that a lot. I started taking community classes, or community college courses as a sophomore. Ended up graduating with plus 20 credits going into my freshman year. And I really just kind of channeled all my dedication and passion and like drive that I had into sports, into athletics, into academics. And, there's a lot more out there than sports. I know that it is a very concentrated and very popularized part of life, but, there's a lot more out there than sports. And I'm just appreciative that I was able to see that, and I'm able to offer, a different side to that sports world. Having my perspective, I can help out other athletes, help them see that every time you take the court, you take the field, whatever you're doing, that there's a chance that something could happen that completely changes, the desired path that you might have. So you got to go every time you go out. You just got to go out like it's your last time, because one day it will be. One day you will retire. Hopefully not in a bad circumstance, but just always be grateful for what you have. Be appreciative. So yeah.
You just made me think of something. I was watching a video, and your brother, Kada, he said to you in the hospital that eventually the ball is going to stop bouncing. Like eventually the sports career is going to come to an end. How did his words and his support and encouragement help you get through this?
It definitely meant a lot. I've been hearing that from my parents and other people, but from someone who was in it, and from someone who was playing it at such a high level and is still playing it at such a high level, for him to understand that, it really just kind of broadened my perspective even more, just to understand that there are athletes out there that do understand this, and what we all can do is just make sure the athletes that maybe think that that take their situation for granted, try to get them to come around to a more developed mindset about their situation. But for Kate to say that and have that mindset, that definitely let me know that like my support system was just outstanding, like top to bottom.
Do you feel like when he's playing now, when he's playing in the NBA games, that it like is an extension of you? Do you feel your presence like when he's playing?
We definitely have conversations a lot. I always text him before games, text him after games. Whenever I can watch, I do. About the only time if I can't watch his game, if I have like something to study for or something like that. But I always watch him. It's like that's my brother. That's my only brother I have. So like we share the same DNA. So like whenever I'm watching him out there. He said he'll play for both of us, and so that's just monumental to me.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kai. We appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me a platform to talk about it.
Thank you, and we'll be in touch because there's a lot of work. There's still a lot of work for us to do with sudden cardiac arrest. So we hope to have your involvement with the different foundations, the network of foundations, and the work that we're doing. So thank you so much.
Yes, I wish you the best of luck with all that. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to his mom, Wilma. Wilma, talk a little bit about how it felt, what emotions were running through your mind when this happened, and also answer that question that I asked a little bit ago. What did you know about sudden cardiac arrest before it invaded your life?
Well, as a parent, let me say this first. Kai, if you need to drop off to go do your studying, you're okay to drop off, sweetie.
Okay.
All right, babe. Thank you.
I got it. I was just moving.
Oh, okay. First of all, as a parent, you when your children are away from you, no matter how old they are, you always are dreading that phone call. And so up to that point, I don't think we'd ever had that kind of a phone call where there's that urgent, very pensive voice that you get on the other end when a coach is telling you something is wrong. And so when I got that call coming outside of Indianapolis from his coach, I didn't know what to do. The only thing that I remember was hitting my flashers because I thought I'm going to speed, and I think people just need to know to probably get out of my way. But as far as my knowledge of sudden cardiac arrest, I really didn't have anything other than, the stories I think we'd all heard about Hank Gathers. But even with that, I had never spent too much time looking into it and understanding how, unfortunately, how often it happens. And so to get that call, the Kai had gone down. We didn't know what it was at the time. We just knew that he had collapsed. We didn't know if it was heart. We didn't know if it was a concussion. We just didn't know. And so once we found out they had to use the AED to restart his heart, then it was, okay, wow, his heart, why? And Kai didn't mention the night before this, he said he was working out. He was running on the treadmill at a pace of 12. So that's really fast and really hard. But he was in really good physical condition. And I think had it happened any place else, I'm not sure what the outcome would have been, honestly.
Right. So it was very fortunate that it happened at practice and not at home where an AED would not have been available, because 70% of sudden cardiac arrest actually occur at home. Exactly. So him having it happen where there were two trainers available to resuscitate him was very lucky and really not even lucky, but a blessing,
It was.
God's intervention.
I was just about to correct you. That was
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
And God just had all the pieces in the right place for him, because as you all know, sometimes, I'm sorry, I have a little dog. Unfortunately, sometimes when people are trained to do certain things, doesn't mean that they can perform them in a crisis situation. And so for us, it was a matter of these two young ladies doing what they were trained to do as grad students. They immediately went into action. They were grad students at ISU working on their masters, and they were assigned to his high school, University High School, which is the lab school of ISU. So they were assigned to be there to finish out their coursework. And, they just did what they were trained to do, and they did it with the utmost, efficiency and urgency. So again, we are extremely grateful and thankful for them that they did what they were supposed to do. And as Kai said, they're family now. They'll always be a part of us.
So when Kai was resuscitated, you went to the hospital when you finally got there. And what did the doctors tell you? What did they inform you? Because you said you didn't know much about sudden cardiac arrest. At this point, what did you learn about sudden cardiac arrest in that room?
Well, they said those same statistics that you shared earlier of the survival rate, and that he was certainly on the very blessed side of surviving. He didn't have any neurological damage. There were no lasting effects of anything, and they put him through different tests to make sure. So the time that he was unconscious, because Emily was doing CPR on him while the AED was powering up, that kept the blood going to his brain. And we know sometimes that if you don't have both of them work together, you can have, residual damage because there wasn't the blood flow that happens with the CPR process. So when they shared with us that he had gone into cardiac arrest, and it was sudden cardiac arrest, because again, no warning signs, you don't really know what to say with that. He had no pre-existing heart condition, no signs, no symptoms. He had gone through the whole day not feeling bad. Then all of a sudden, he's just down. So it was a lot to process. It was a lot to try to figure out how we got from yesterday he was this and today he's that. So it was a lot to process.
Right. Jewel, your situation was significantly different than the Bates situation. Before you tell us your story, can you tell us a little bit about what you knew about sudden cardiac arrest before it invaded your life?
Nothing. Absolutely. I can't even, you know how you hear about the athletes back in the day, but because there was nothing recent that would make that was one of the, when it happened, I didn't even know. I'm like, what is it? Did he hit his head? What? I didn't know anything about it. To answer your question, I do nothing.
Let me ask you both this before we go into your story. Why is it that we're not talking about this more? Why are parents who have athletes that are in sports not being informed about the risk of sudden cardiac arrest? This is the #1 killer of student athletes. It is the #1 killer on school campuses. It kills 7,000 youth every year. It is not rare. But here it is, parent after parent, we're not being informed about the risk. We sign these waivers, and I have one right here. I'm going to read real quick to you guys what we're signing when we sign our children up to participate in sports. It says that if you pass your physical, examination, that it measures blood pressure and careful listening examination of the heart, especially for murmurs and rhythm abnormalities. If there are no warning signs reported on the health history and no abnormalities discovered on exam, no additional evaluation or testing is recommended for cardiac issues or concerns. So that's by listening with a stethoscope, which we know that 90% of the conditions that lead to sudden cardiac arrest cannot be detected with a stethoscope. But this form that I signed for my child to participate in sports says that no further evaluation is needed or is recommended if they pass this physical. It further goes on to say, additional screening using an ECG or an echocardiogram is readily available to athletes from their personal physicians, but is not mandatory and is generally not recommended by either the American Heart Association or the American College of Cardiology. Limitations of additional screening include the possibility of false positives, which lead to unnecessary stress for the student and parent or guardian, as well as unnecessary restriction from participation. Now, what parent after reading that is going to think, you know what, I need to go and get my child's heart screened?
Right.
You're going to be comfortable with this saying that that's not necessary. But this is what we're signing as a waiver. So by giving me this as a waiver, you're not truly informing me of the risk. So what am I signing?
Right.
Right.
Why won't we give the right information?
I would like to say that it's about cost of that test. And because it's not a standard test, you know, where the cost is lower because they don't do them often enough. And so for insurance companies, I think that that cost is something that scares parents away if they think they're going to have to pay for it out of pocket. I think
And
it's
I
a
think
matter.
that's awful. I think that's
Well,
awful.
and I could be wrong, but
Let me say this, Wilma, if
think
the
you're
wording,
right.
we're talking about the wording on this. So as a parent, yes, I'm going to look at the cost factor for something that I deem unnecessary.
Right.
But if you're telling me, if this form says 7,000 youth die every year from sudden cardiac arrest, it's the #1 killer of student athletes. And if you choose to get your child's test done, then it's on you to bear that cost. Then I would be more likely to take on that cost, but it's being presented as if it's unnecessary.
Well, it's also being presented as if it's extremely rare for something to happen that is not picked up in that sort of cursory physical that they listen to a child's heartbeat. Because you're right, unless it's a murmur or something that's already there in a child, they're not going to hear it. I mean, Kai had a physical that season before the basketball season started. You know, there was nothing.
And a lot of times it's not detected until later on, until there's more stress on the heart for certain athletes, certain athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And then for others, you know, for children with different conditions, it may show up that way too. So, but still, it should be a part of the physical.
Right.
Or
it should be a
the
part of the
language.
physical exam. And if they're not going to provide it with the physical, at least give the language that this is something that is not rare. It's something that is more common than concussions. Look at this. We talk about concussions all the time. Both of you mentioned concussions because it's been programmed in your head that a concussion is something that's dangerous for an athlete to experience. But with a concussion, it's not an immediate death. This sudden cardiac arrest, there's a risk of immediate death. With concussions, the risk of death is when you have a secondary concussion. So if an athlete has a concussion and then they go back into play and they reconcuss themselves, that's when you have the risk of death. But as you know, we talk about concussions so much that everybody's worried. I was worried about concussions. My son played football. When he gets tackled, I'm grimacing because I'm afraid that he's going to get a concussion. Never in my life am I worried about his heart suddenly stopping with no previous conditions or symptoms. I mean, but the language, the narrative, that's why we are talking. Someone is asking, does anyone know the average cost of an EKG? It depends on your insurance. Some people pay a $20 copay for an EKG.
Right.
Actually, no. My friend last year, she got an EKG, an echocardiogram, and a cardiology visit for $20 copay. So it depends on your insurance. Now, some people who have a high deductible insurance or people without insurance, it can cost up to $500 for an EKG. But there are organizations out there like the Zeke Upshaw Foundation, the Damani Gibson Foundation, Kyle's Heart Foundation, Kyle J. Taylor Foundation. I'll list out all the foundations in the comments. We have a network of foundations all across the country who provide free or low-cost EKGs, and some of them even offer the echocardiogram with the EKG. So do not worry about the cost. All we need is for us to raise the awareness, and I tell you, I promise you, there are organizations across the country willing to step in and help with that, with offsetting the cost of the EKG. And at the end of the day, I'll tell you this, the cost of the EKG is nothing. Even when I'm paying $500 of it's nothing compared to the cost of a funeral.
Right.
Nothing.
And that EKG is just that first screening. If they discover something in that EKG, then you can go on and have the cardiac MRI. So that EKG is
the
important
ultrasound of the heart.
Exactly. So that EKG is a very important first step. Absolutely.
Right. And I say for anyone, I know a lot of people say the EKG, and if there's a red flag from the EKG, then to get additional testing. But my recommendation is that if there are symptoms, then don't stop at the EKG. If there are symptoms, get the echocardiogram and a stress test and a Holter monitor at minimum. I don't think they'll give you a heart MRI unless, like Wilma said, there's something found in one of the other tests. But you can request a Holter monitor and a stress test and an echocardiogram if you're having symptoms.
Correct.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jewel, tell us a little bit about what happened when Zeke collapsed. Was he experiencing symptoms leading up to those days?
You know, his girlfriend and we both were watching on Facebook Live as we did for all the games that went live. And Zeke looked very good. He was on fire that game. And and if there were symptoms that he may have had, he probably said, I'll deal with them later. This is a playoff game. I need to perform, is what I'm thinking about my Zeke. I'm thinking that they weren't to the point where he would, was concerned about it. Maybe his heart was fluttering. Maybe his stomach, I don't know. I did ask a few of his teammates, do they recall him saying anything? And none of them said that anything. They didn't say anything.
And that goes back to talking to us about heart issues. Because an athlete, I know I was an athlete my whole life and I was a coach. And I didn't know that this was something that we needed to be afraid of. I had an athlete over here the other day who told me that she feels chest pains. And she said that, when she works out, she said, when you work out and then your chest start hurting. And I was like, no, that's not supposed to happen. She said, well, I talked to, somebody else on the team felt it too, but we just pushed through it because it goes away. And I said, no. But that's the way that our athletes come up thinking. But if we talk to them and tell them this can end your life, this can be something that can take your life away, but we're not telling them that. So they're putting their bodies on the line and they're pushing themselves to the limit because that's what all the quotes say, right? Push yourself to the limit. There are even quotes out there that as coaches we've posted. I remember a quote, it said, unless you puke, faint, or die, keep going. Those are the quotes that we're pushing. That's the language that we give athletes, and that's not right. We have to change that narrative and tell them, hey, listen to your bodies. You feel something, say something. Like we have the quotes on bullying all over the schools, and it says, see something, say something. Feel something, say something, right? We have the sayings with buckling up, buckle up is the law. Texting and driving, it can wait. Can we create some language and narrative around sudden cardiac arrest to make this something that people have on their radar and they know that this can take lives?
I know Zeke didn't know anything about that because I know my son. I know that he cared about his health. He cared about, when he had ailments that would prevent him from performing. But I'm right. You're absolutely right. And that's something, if I had any other children, of course, I would, drive it home as well. But it was the last game. Well, we thought it was the last game of the season. We thought it was the last game of the season. And then later, I think earlier that day, Julia, his girlfriend, told me that, no, Mom, they have one more game. They need to win this game. And so Zeke was a little bummed out about it, but he's like, okay, that's why that game that he was playing in was so critically important to him. So I don't know if he had, a pain in his leg or he had a headache or anything, like Kai said, he felt different. He had never felt that before, but it happened so suddenly because if he had felt that after he made that 3-point shot before the last minute of the game, or the last couple of minutes of the game, I'm sure he would have sat down. But it was 40 seconds left. So he was doing the screen. The game is almost over. So if I'm thinking about a high-powered athlete and someone that wants their team to win, that's what he's thinking about, and not himself.
And the adrenaline, as an athlete, I know the adrenaline, sometimes you'll realize after the game or after the competition that you feel something, but you don't feel it while it's happening because the adrenaline is taking over.
Exactly.
So tell us about what happened. Did he get, we heard how he had the AED attached within 2 minutes. He got CPR right away. What happened with Zeke?
None of that. None of it. I'm watching Zeke collapse. The way that he fell was very concerning. And so the last 40 seconds of the game, this is still difficult for me to talk about, but the last 40 seconds of the game, he was setting a screen for another player, and he just collapsed. He didn't brace himself or anything. He just fell face forward, knees buckled, and just down. And he remained there. He remained right where he fell for a long time, too long to. We're at home going completely crazy because we can't believe he's still there. We're screaming to the TV for them to do something, like they can hear us. And when I'm seeing that he's still there, that's when I start calling his coach, like he's going to answer. But I just didn't know what to do. And Julia is going completely crazy too, because she's the camera. The camera was still on Zeke for a while, for at least, I think, 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, and the announcers were saying he's still lying there. Like
What were the trainers? What were people doing while he was laying there for 4 minutes?
Well, they were all on their knees around him. I saw on the video that an AED was brought. The trainer ran over to the bench and got something, and I can't definitively say that because it was on video and I didn't get it blowed up or anything, but everyone is saying that it was an AED, but it wasn't used. And they didn't start CPR at that time. You have to look at the pulse, feel the pulse, start the CPR, and then apply the AED. They thought Zeke hit his head. They thought Zeke hit his head.
How long was it before he got CPR started?
Well, the paramedics, the EMTs came. They walked over to Zeke, and this is all on video, so it's not like making it up. But they walked over to Zeke, put him on the stretcher. I thought at that time they would start the CPR, but he didn't get CPR until he got into the ambulance.
If you had to estimate, how many minutes did he go without CPR? 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Oh, I would say about 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
Because the time that he was on the floor was about, I would say, 8 minutes, and then they pick him up and then they take him outside. So unless they started it at the 15-minute mark, but still it's too late.
And every minute that CPR is delayed, your chance of survival goes down 10%. So after 10 minutes, it's very, very unlikely that you can survive.
Yeah.
And you're watching this all play out on TV.
On TV.
And there's thousands of people in the stands watching.
Yeah, and they're all like this. Well, then there was a feed. There's a live feed where people can comment. They were saying, like, why aren't they doing anything? do CPR. There were doctors in the stands saying that they can, you know, they were like, do something. It was so many people in the feed saying things that I ended up reading it like, I think we were reading it while it was, because we had it up. We would not take it down. So we were reading those comments real time. And then they eventually took it off, you know, because I guess they realized this is not good. But initially it stayed up because they're thinking that, and I don't know what I'm thinking that they thought that it was a concussion and that he would they would get him on the stretcher and maybe he would start moving. I don't know. I really don't know. I just know that the broadcasters were still talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has been, because you can go back and look at live games, but I don't think you can look at that one.
And as coaches, as trainers, you know, we have the CPR training, we have the AED training. So she ran and got the AED, but they triaged him, like you're saying, for a concussion. They used the protocol for a concussion. And we have to change that to where it's now, okay, like you said, how can we make sure that this isn't the heart before we go into the other protocols? Because if the heart stops, we only have this much time. There's not a time limit to
I don't even know how they
concussion.
made that, how they came to that conclusion. I don't know, because I don't
And they
know.
should know that if they attach the AED, it's not going to shock him unless he needs to be shocked. So all they had to do was attach it to him, and then it would tell them.
They all looked like they were shocked that they didn't know. When you say drills, I believe that there were no drills, at least to the point where it hadn't happened in that type of, on a big stage in a while. It doesn't matter, but I'm just trying, and I shouldn't try to justify because there's no justification, because this is your job.
Right.
This is what you do on a daily basis. This is what you should practice for, actually, quite often, I would think. But they all looked as though they were shocked.
Now, being that he was in professional basketball, had they done a routine? Because we're talking about it should be a part of the physical for high schoolers, and if it's not. Collegiate level, NCAA, is not a routine part of the physical exam for them. Some colleges make the determination and they give a heart screening, but the majority of colleges do not do that for all athletes. So in the professional basketball, were they giving at that time heart screenings to all the athletes?
I know that they give the physicals. I don't know if those included heart screening.
From what I know about professional sports, it depends on the team. And it again, it kind of goes back to if they think there's something else they need to look for. But I think Jewel is correct. It's not routinely done.
And that has to change, because they're making money off of these athletes. And isn't their life worth?
It's changed now. I believe that it's changed now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
From what
and
I hear.
And even with COVID, I see a lot of professional sports teams and even colleges now taking heart screenings more seriously. So hopefully that carries over, you know, when COVID hopefully lightens up, you know, because a lot of teams are doing routine screenings on everybody because of COVID, especially the ones that have had COVID, because sudden cardiac arrest has increased. I've heard numbers as much as 65% since COVID has invaded our country. So let's go and see if we have any questions. Does anybody have any questions for Wilma or Jewel? Make sure you guys share this video. Share this video. Jewel, so talk to me about, you said that that's changed. Has any of that, do you see changes happening because of Zeke's high profile situation happening on TV?
I can't say that, because after Zeke's passing, I wasn't interested in anything basketball related. I didn't. I think that I heard through a mutual friend that they have started changing that within the NBA. Did I get a memo about it? Absolutely not. But I'm happy that they've done it because I don't wish this on anyone else. And, that way they can get ahead of it if they're doing that now, screening that. They, like you said, they do have the money to do that. And I'm sure if an athlete knows about Zeke's situation, which they all do, a lot of them put, rib to Zeke on their shoes and everything, high profile athletes. And so I know they know that it's a thing, and I know that they are making sure that it's a part of their own because of the response, if nothing else.
Mhm.
Wow.
I would. So I know that they and I would see why they would change it.
Right. I see Sonia on here. Sonia lost her son OJ just a few months ago during an AAU
Oh,
tournament.
oh, I saw that, and I'm so sorry.
So
I
sorry. Yeah.
I saw that. I wanted to reach out to Sonia actually.
And when it happened, I know that I know she was like so much in disbelief. Like, this can't be his heart. My baby didn't have a bad heart. Did
Right.
that thought go through any of your heads?
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so for us, it was we found that out that morning after his cardiac arrest, exactly why he went into cardiac arrest. And that was that sort of real hard slap that if he had been somewhere else, or if people didn't do what they needed to do, or the AED wasn't there, we know what the outcome would have been. So that's when we started immediately saying, we've got to do whatever we can to make sure there's AEDs and get CPR training to whoever needs it, wherever. We've sent AEDs around the country
Yeah.
because we just know you have to have it there, but you have to use it also to make that difference. So, while my soul hurts for all the moms and families that have lost children and sons to sudden cardiac arrest, looking at Kai, he is the living. He's the hope of when it's done right. What can happen?
Exactly.
He is that example of what happens when you do the right things or give someone a chance to survive. Whatever else may happen downstream, but give them a chance to survive in that immediate moment of collapse. And that's why we are so blessed that Kai feels comfortable enough to even talk about it, because we know some teenagers, some 20s, they're just not comfortable with that.
Right.
So every time when people ask him, if Mama Jewel asks him to do something, Kai's going to do that because he knows how different it could have been, and he knew Zeke, and so
Right.
Zeke's passing just that was hard on him because it was almost a year to the day after his cardiac arrest.
Now,
So,
let me ask you this, and then we're going to go to the question. So Kai had his cardiac arrest before Zeke's,
correct.
but you were unaware. You all knew each other, but you were unaware of Kai's sudden cardiac arrest, Jewel?
Yes, I was unaware of it.
And how did you find out?
Through Zeke's coach. Well,
His college coach?
His college coach.
Okay.
His college coach and I still talk. We're friends, and we're all mutual friends. So we all know each other. And you know what? Part of me, I really want to say that I think that my son did tell me something about Kai while Zeke was alive. I just don't know how he told me. But it was something he may have texted me about it. And I said that I was going to reach out to Wilma. And I know that he did tell me, but I didn't know. I don't even think Z knew the details of it. And I know that he may have mentioned it because I don't want to say that I didn't know completely, because that seems like that I knew something about it. I just didn't know the extent of what happened.
And that would
And it
make
was
sense.
always my intention to reach out to Wilma to find out what happened. But I didn't want to invade on anything. And you know how you're like, she hasn't talked to me in a while. I don't, And so I kind of let it went away until Coach P came and said, you need to talk to Wilma. You need to.
And this
you
was
need to-
after Zeke's passing that he said that to
Yes.
you?
Very, very soon after.
And so that message, I think, can go out to anybody watching this, any parent watching this, because, you know, you hear of sudden cardiac arrest and you think it's rare. You say, well, it happened to that person. It's very unlikely that, being that it happened to someone that I know, that it's going to actually happen to me as well. Right. We have to have these conversations, talk and share the information, because we don't know. None of us are immune. None of us are exempt from this hitting our families and our households.
None of us. And that's why the invasion of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, people get tired of us. They unfollow us. They do whatever. That's okay, because we're going to continue to talk about it, because I want my story to reach someone, and that maybe they'll tell someone, because it's each one can tell somebody. And maybe, you know, we can say, well, my friend's son plays basketball. Let me just let her know about it.
Right. So we have a question here, and Michelle says, did they ever determine what caused Zeke's sudden cardiac arrest?
Well, he had hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. He had essentially it's an enlarged heart.
Right. And Michelle lost her son, her 15-year-old, 15 years ago, Gerard. You know, yeah. And I'm not sure, Michelle, was it hypertrophic cardiomyopathy? Sonia says, you just never think it will be you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said that in my live.
Say that again.
I said, I mentioned that in the live that I did, you know, and I don't know if people get offended because of the way that I say it. I said, just don't think it can't be you.
Right.
Could be any. Do you think I thought it could be me? And why wouldn't it be me? Because it's a silent killer. It affects anybody.
Right.
You don't know. It's silent.
Yeah.
I think that's why.
And what I want to say, we were talking earlier about like family history, because that's one of the things on the physical exam that would prompt someone to get additional tests, is knowing our family history. But a lot of us do not know if somebody else in our family had a sudden cardiac arrest. A lot of it is misdiagnosed as a heart attack, and a heart attack and sudden cardiac arrest are completely different. Or, you know, knowing if someone else died suddenly, like in a single car accident. We don't know if that was a sudden cardiac arrest unless they've done an autopsy, but sometimes they just say it was a car accident and leave it at that. It wasn't until this happened to me that I found out that single car accidents can be a sudden cardiac arrest, or people who have unexplained drownings, that can be a sudden cardiac arrest. So having these conversations with our family members and knowing our family history. I think you said earlier, Wilma, that you may have had family members that had heart issues, but you didn't know about it before.
Correct. And it wasn't the same that Kai had, but still there was a history of heart disease on my husband's side that we had no idea. It was also his mother, not only his father. But what I was going to say earlier, I think it is about having these kind of conversations and making sure that the narrative of sudden cardiac arrest is included with those winter, fall athletes meetings when you go to the school and they talk about all that kind of stuff. This has to be part of the conversation. They talk about concussion protocols, because all of a sudden that became something in the news when the NFL players started really talking about the impact on the lives of those retired players from all those concussions that were not treated. And they were, told to go back into the game, and they could barely, make out two fingers in front of their face. So sudden cardiac arrest should be part of that conversation, that unfortunately those student athletes within the age of, 15 and 20 or 23 even, they are the most vulnerable population for this, because they probably have been physical and very active all their lives. Their hearts are already enlarged because they work so much harder than the normal person. But an enlarged heart or an athlete's heart is very different than having a diseased heart or a hypertrophic heart. So you have to be able to share that information, that parents can make that decision to say, you know what, maybe we should have another test done. Like you said, have that next screening level done, rather than just that cursory sort of physical that's given to all of our athletes when they sign up for their sport.
Right. And just to clarify, when it comes to hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, it happens more in athletes. But sudden cardiac arrest in general, it is not something that happens more in athletes than in non-athletes. All children are at risk. So even if your child is not an athlete, it's important for you to get their heart screened and to listen to this advice and understand how to be prepared in the event that it happens. I heard a statistic at Parent Heart Watch this past January that 2/3 of all sudden cardiac arrest happens outside of physical activity, outside of sports. We have so many people in our group who their children weren't athletes. They just fell asleep and never woke up. And you can see that video that we have on YouTube. If you go to the YouTube channel, Rakaya Gibson's YouTube channel, and you'll see the video, and it has so many children, athletes, non-athletes, 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 20-year-olds, who all were just beautiful, healthy children, and suddenly we're gone.
Right.
But we have foundations and like Wilma and what she's doing with the AED distribution and CPR training. And I want Jewel to take a minute to tell us about the Zeke Upshaw Foundation and what your focus is and how you're trying to do something to put an end to sudden cardiac arrest.
Well, with COVID, we want to do so much more, but the Zeke Upshaw Foundation is getting the word out about sudden cardiac arrest. And getting and for the athletes to listen to their bodies and also pay attention to the signs or the symptoms associated with that, and also giving AEDs to organizations that don't have them. But I want to make sure that they sign a pledge that says that they're going to make sure that they're upkept. They are, they make sure that they're in a place that people knows where they're at. I know that they have to be locked up sometimes because people will take them, but I want to make sure that there's that pledge to just not have it, but to educate those around them about it. So that's part of our mission. And to also, CPR, we want to push it, but I haven't started any CPR classes, but in the future, that's what we plan to do as well.
Right.
And
people can...
and speaking engagements about it, because the last one that I did was a while ago, but I got inboxed from kids. They were about 12, 13, and 14-year-olds here in Vegas that told me that I changed their lives by speaking to them for those few minutes about their bodies, paying attention, and making sure that those around them are CPR certified, and that if something were to happen, how the response would be. For them to ask those people their coaches and their referees and things like that, if they were certified.
Right. And we together, Zeke Upshaw Foundation, the Damani Gibson Foundation, along with all of our other partner organizations this month for Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month, have been raising awareness, have the race to end sudden cardiac arrest. And we want to encourage people to continue to register. We had a goal, I know for my foundation, I was trying to reach 1,000 people signed up for the race under our link, and we're at about 750, so 250 to go. Zeke Upshaw Foundation has had a lot of people supporting, but we still need more people to support. Sign up for the race to end sudden cardiac arrest. Zeke Upshaw Foundation, please drop your link in the comments of this video so that all of your supporters can take the step to support. A lot of people send us messages, like you said, and say, we're so glad that you're raising awareness. We're so glad that you're doing what you're doing, but we need you to know, we need you to stand with us, because we have a lot of things in the works that we're working on in regards to demanding change. And in order to demand change, we need a seat at the table. In order to get a seat at the table, it takes us having an army of people behind us. How better for us to show the people that we're going to talk about making these changes and making the heart exams a part of the physical exam, to make AEDs available everywhere that children are playing or that sports are taking place. How better for us to demand that than for us to be able to print out a list and say, we have these thousands of people who have signed up for the race to end sudden cardiac arrest, these thousands of people who stand with us, who say that the children's life, the youth lives are so important that they're willing to do whatever it takes to save their lives. That's why we need you to register. We're not asking you to register for donations or for money, but it's just like signing a petition so that we can go to the powers that be and say, we have an army with us who stand with us, who are telling you that this is important to them, your constituents, right? Because we, it's election cycle, so we're gonna go to politicians, we're gonna go to, businesses, corporations, everybody, and we need to be able to show them that you are standing with us. So sign up with the link. It takes 60 seconds to sign up. If you want to give a donation, you can. We are accepting donations, but that is not the primary concern.
One thing I can say, what we're doing, we partner with Illinois Heart and Lung here in Bloomington, Illinois. So if anybody's interested in supporting Kai's fund through that, it's illinoisheartandlung.org. And we're going to be giving away another AED this week. And we also worked with our local politicians where before each athletic event, there's always a discussion at the coaches table about, keep the game clean. They talk about concussion protocol. In Illinois now, they talk about if there's an AED in the building, where it is, and who has access to it. So we were able to get that enacted just this past fall because we were really concerned that if there's a sporting event, does everybody know where the AED is in that high school building? Sometimes there's only entrances open. If it's a late night game, they kind of funnel you in through doors. Yeah, exactly. So we were able to make sure that is part of every pre-game conversation, where the AED is, if there's an athletic trainer on site, or if there's a doctor in the building. And we work with Illinois Heart and Lung.
How do you sign the petition? You sign up for the race to end sudden cardiac arrest. The link will be in the comments. And actually I have the link here, but I'll drop it in the comments. And you sign that. And then, so right now we have about 1,600 people signed up that are saying that they support what we're doing. So if you sign that link, share the link with others so that we can spread the word, so that we can get thousands. We were trying to get 7,000 people to sign up in honor of the 7,000 children who die every year from sudden cardiac arrest. So please go ahead and sign up there. Also, I want to tell you a little bit about my foundation, Damani Gibson Foundation. This month, we've gone out and done talks and SCA drills with over 750 athletes this month alone, teaching them CPR, making them actually attach the AED to the mannequins and understanding that the AED is not going to hurt anyone, that it's going to guide them through the steps. So we've been going out, we've been talking about that. We also helped coordinate the Race to End Sudden Cardiac Arrest as the lead organization. We have been just trying to do everything that we can to raise awareness, to teach people about CPR, AED, and sudden cardiac arrest, so that together, we have strength in numbers. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can make change. We've given out a couple of AEDs this month, and we are in the process of giving out more, especially with the funds raised through the Race to End Sudden Cardiac Arrest. And also, the Damani Gibson Foundation helps other organizations build capacity with fundraising ideas. And someone asked here, how do you start a nonprofit? We've helped people start nonprofits because a part of our mission is empowering other moms who have experienced loss with, finding their purpose and finding a path forward for their child's legacy to live on. So Heather, I think you're related to Sonia. I talked to Sonia about it, and whenever she's ready, I'm willing to do the 501c3 paperwork for her and get that up and running for you guys. So anybody else that has questions about starting a nonprofit, I've written grants, over $1 million worth of grants in the past, so reach out to me. You can reach out through the Damani Gibson Foundation at doitfordamani.com. I am 100% in support of ZekeUpshawFoundation.org, and also Wilma Bates and her efforts with the Illinois Heart and Lung Foundation. There's enough support for us to spread it around. It's not about one foundation getting all the support. That's why I bring others on, because together we're going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. Sonia, you think you're ready, baby? We're going to do this then. We're going to do it for OJ. We're going to do it for OJ. I'll reach out to you after this call And Sonia, I still
And
have your link ready. I have your
two.
link on the race in sudden cardiac arrest. It's still there. So instead of signing up under my link, why don't you send out the link for OJ and get people to sign up on his link, okay? All right. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Share this video, share. There's so much information that has been a blessing, I think, to others. Before we get off, Wilma, one thing that we didn't touch on is the fact that you have a son in the NBA and you have a son who's experienced sudden cardiac arrest. How does that, like, as a parent who still has an athlete playing, does that ever give you pause?
It does, but they put Keita through extensive testing once Kai had his cardiac arrest. And as I said, and I think Kai said it best, their relationship is so strong and so solid. And as siblings, parents, we don't need to get into how the siblings relate. But I am so very, very fortunate and blessed that Keita is the way that he is with his little brother, and he's never made Kai feel like, oh, here you're not playing, you didn't play in college, because honestly, Keita would have even said, and he did say, that Kai was going to be better than he was. And so, for all that encouragement and support that Kai has gotten for his different journey, I only pause because I'm blessed in that I have one son that is doing it for both. He's doing it for Zeke. He's doing it for Damani. He's doing it for all those young men that didn't reach their potential because of a sudden cardiac arrest event. But we're blessed.
Wow. And you're being a blessing to so many families. Thank you so much for sharing your story, because there's so many people. I think part of the reason that this is such a pervasive problem in society is because it's so painful. It happens to people and then they don't want to talk about it. And I respect everybody's prerogative to not talk about it, right? Because we can't force people to talk about it. But by talking about it, we're raising awareness. If you think about like breast cancer, it's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, right? And how big Susan G. Komen has gotten in the race for the cure and breast cancer awareness, it's gotten so huge because people kept talking about it. They kept pounding the pavement and doing something about it. And there's no shame in it. Women now, they bear their scars and they show that they had surgery, because it's not anything to be ashamed of. And I want anybody out there that has experienced sudden cardiac arrest or had a family member experience it, there's no reason for us to be ashamed of it. Our pain is not going to have power over us. We need to talk about it, because if we talk about it, then perhaps we can save other lives, and we can make sudden cardiac arrest to where now NBA teams and NFL teams, instead of just wearing pink during October, now they're wearing red shoestrings or, red ribbons or whatever it is that we come up with for sudden cardiac arrest. But this has to be a thing. Breast cancer kills 46,900 people a year, and that's a lot. That's too many. That's a big deal, and they deserve to raise awareness. But sudden cardiac arrest, if we talk about as a whole, it kills 356,000 people every year, not just youth, and it's not heart attacks. 356,000, that's almost 1,000 people a day that die from sudden cardiac arrest. You mean to tell me we don't need to raise awareness for that? Right. Because if by raising awareness, we can reduce that by 50, 75%, isn't it worth it?
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right.
You said it perfectly, how they push early detection for breast cancer. We have to push early detection for sudden cardiac events. And
exactly. And with the mammograms, that's done every year, right? Every year. Right. And so with the heart screenings, every year, we need to continue to screen the hearts as long as they're growing until someone reaches adult age. But so for me as a coach, I knew a heart screening was recommended, and Damani had it once in 8th grade, but I didn't know it needed to be repeated.
Yeah.
Because their bodies are still changing, they're growing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then if a mammogram is covered by insurance, can't we get heart screenings covered by insurance?
Right.
Yeah. Jewel, you were going to say something else? I'm sorry.
So that Zeke was 26 years old. It's still And that's, I think, a little bit, I know the heart screenings sometimes don't cover up to 26 years of age, but if someone needs a heart screening, I don't care how old they are, we're going to give them one. We're going to, if they feel they need it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important work that you're doing,
Yes.
all of us, and we're going to keep honoring our babies, and keeping them alive, keeping all of the youth alive that we can. Kimberly Williams, thank you so much. So wait, she says, what is considered extensive testing? We got a few people. I see Belia, she just lost her son in July to sudden cardiac arrest as well. And she said the information, like if she had known, sometimes the what ifs, but we only can live with what information we have at the time. But that's why we're sharing the information, so that other moms don't have to learn in hindsight what we can share right now in real time. Kimberly is asking what's considered extensive testing. What did we say about extensive testing, ladies?
I think that we didn't say any much about extensive, but we said that, well, I know for Zeke, they would say extensive is after they do the EKG. We said that after that, they need to go, probably if it's something shows up, they have to have the ultrasound of the heart.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the one that can have a pretty large price tag on it. But if it's something that's flagged in that initial screening, it's absolutely worth it to have that cardiac MRI with the ultrasound. And it's that I mean, it is so clear.
Yes.
Right. And the ultrasound, so the EKG picks up on electrical rhythms. It'll pick up, and it only picks up on what's happening at that time. So if the person has an arrhythmia, but the arrhythmia is not happening while the EKG is connected, then it won't pick it up. And so that's why if somebody has a symptom like a racing heartbeat, it's important to not just stop at the EKG, because it's only going to capture what's happening at that moment.
Correct.
And Kai mentioned having like a racing heartbeat, and his happened to have the sudden cardiac arrest 10 seconds later. Other people who have racing heartbeats, they may not have that sudden cardiac arrest right then, but that is a symptom, that is a red flag that needs to be followed up on. And you don't want it to happen like his happened at the right place, like his mom said, to where he survived. You don't want it to happen while your child is sleeping.
Or
So then that's 8 hours driving. You don't want it to happen while they're, all alone, at in their room or at a restaurant. And at restaurants, that's something that is so surprising to me. We did the AED challenge last year, and I participated, and I started looking. I went to restaurants and I would ask them, where's your AED? And they're asking me, what's an AED? Not one single restaurant that I went to here in Houston had an AED at the restaurant. So we're at a restaurant. Think about it. You're there, you're eating. There's hundreds of people. Somebody has a sudden cardiac arrest. What's going to happen? So these drills that we're talking about are not just important for considering with athletics, because there was a man who had a sudden cardiac arrest the exact same day as Damani. Somebody jumped in with CPR. He was at Chick-fil-A, and the ambulance got there quick enough to give him defibrillation, and he survived. So, we have to think about it everywhere, not just in athletics. What are you going to do if it happens at your home? Where's the closest AED to you right now? Can send somebody go and get it back to you before the ambulance gets there? Because the average ambulance is taking about 10 to 15 minutes to arrive.
Right. And I think we talked earlier about that app, and that's something for people to be aware of, Pulse Point. And so if there is an AED, you get the app. If people have registered the AED, then you know where there was one close to you. But not everybody registers their AEDs. But that is a nice tool if you're out and about in a unfamiliar place or in a restaurant, to see if there is one around. And you're right. Sometimes when you ask and they don't have one, it's mind-boggling that spaces and places that have so many people out in the public using them, that they wouldn't have an AED, and we know they're very affordable. So
Jewel, are you doing the AED challenge? Are you?
Yeah,
so we're both doing.
I put it up. I will be putting it up after this.
Okay, so we're both participating in the AED challenge. So we need everybody to go out, take pictures of AEDs,
Ah,
where you
okay.
find them, take a selfie with it. You know, we're trying to make it fun, like a scavenger hunt. How many? Don't stop at one. Find as many AEDs as you can, take a selfie with it, hashtag AED challenge, and then you can tag either the Zeke Upshot Foundation or the Do It for Damani Foundation in your post. And then also, if you want to get in on it, Wilma, too, they can tag Illinois
Yeah,
Heart and Lung Foundation
yeah.
as well. So let's flood the timelines with the AED challenge and find AEDs everywhere. And like Wilma said, download the app. It's called Post Point AED, and that will let you know where AEDs are that have been registered. But if you start thinking about these things, I'm telling you, is going to lock in. And for coaches out there that might be watching, don't just stop with what we require. We tell athletes to do more than what's required, right? Go above and beyond. So as coaches, I need us to go above and beyond. The once a year CPR training is not enough. If I could go back, I would practice on a mannequin every single month if I could, even more. But I think once a month, like we have coaching meetings, staff meetings, and a lot of times we're shooting the breeze and we're wasting time just to say that we met. You can have a mannequin right there in the room, and everybody that comes in does 10 compressions, 30 compressions on the mannequin, and then have a seat. That can be a part of the sign-in process. It doesn't take long, but we have to start practicing more, because like Wilma said earlier, when it's an emergency, when it's in the height of everything happening, you're not going to have time to stop and think. And even if people have been trained properly, you have to be able to go to reflex. You have to be able to just let your body go into action. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And, maybe we'll do a part 2 of this, but we appreciate everybody for joining us.
Thank you
Yes.
for having us, and thank
Thanks
you,
for
Wilma,
inviting
for
us.
always being there whenever I call.
Absolutely. Anytime to any of you. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And make sure you guys share this video, share, and visit the websites that were shared on this call as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Kaya.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.